Hey, my name is Ayanna Freedom. We're going to be working with the 12 body agreements to release stress, bring in joy, racial trauma healing, collective healing, healing marginalized and oppressed communities, healing your body, ways to rest and release hustle culture, ways to nurture yourself, cultivating your tribe and being present with them, loving the fuck out of your body, and what the fuck is menopause? Join me for this journey of getting your mind, body, and spirit the fuck unstuck. Hey, everybody. It's Ayanna Freedom. And this is the Unfuck Your Stuck podcast. Yep. I'm solo today. I don't have my cute little daughter to make you laugh, but she'll be back. We're going to try to sort of alternate times together. And this one was a little heavy, so I figure, I'll bring it back on to kind of lighten things up. But, before we start, we have to do our breath. And since this one's going to be a little heavy, but there's some things that need to be said. And given that it's Recovery Month and Suicidal Awareness Month, I don't know why those are in the same, but I do. Let's breathe. So drop your shoulders, drop your jaw. See if you can actually be present wherever you are. Meaning, let go of the thoughts that are busy, that are telling you to do something else, that are making you want to be somewhere else other than where you are. And then once you feel like at least your body's in that space, sometimes it takes a minute for our thoughts to get caught up. Then just notice the breath. So how are you breathing today? And then don't judge it. Like, don't fucking judge it. So often we're like, oh my God, I'm not breathing right, or I'm not meditating right. Like, there's no such thing. So just breathe. And then just become the witness, the observer of what's happening in the body. And then the invitation is, do you want to add more breath? And then how do you want to do that? You get to choose. So I love breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, letting the exhale be longer than the inhale. And letting the exhale really empty all the way out so that you get those toxins at the end. And then when you breathe in, you're really breathing in life. You're breathing in you. And now just bring more breath in the body and in any way that you want. Maybe lengthen the spine, continue to drop the jaw. And then one final really deep breath in together. Inhale. And exhale out of the mouth. Nice. Maybe you want to wiggle your shoulders. If you're driving, keep your eyes on the road, but you can still wiggle your shoulders. Maybe shift the jaw. We always like to stick the tongue out. Ow, yeah. There we go. Now we're ready to chat. Okay. September's almost over, and I wanted to make sure that I honored Recovery Month, which is also falls in Suicidal Awareness Month. And those two things, right? I don't know if it was on purpose that those were the same, right? But they're both very connected to each other. So oftentimes when we're in recovery, we are also suicidal. Right? I'm going in heavy quick. I was like, here we go. Pretty present for those that are in recovery or trying to be in recovery or in active addiction. It's probably more present in active addiction, although it all depends on the makeup of who we are and how we got in recovery and what our trauma is. And I wanted to bring this home to the Cape because the Cape is pretty saturated with folks that are in addiction and folks that need to be in recovery. But I wanted to give you a little context of what we're looking at. So Barnstable County has one of the highest overdose populations in the state. And Black and brown residents die at a faster rate than white folks on Cape Cod. Now think about that, because the population of people of color is pretty small in comparison. Even at a higher rate would be the tribal and Wampanoag community. That's the highest. And then black and brown folks are right underneath. That's pretty heavy. So I want to honor that as people of color are dying on the Cape, like of addiction at a very, very, very rapid pace. And that's some scary shit. I mean, addiction's scary in general, but to have that be killing our black and brown folks at the highest rate at one of the largest population of, white folks is rough. It's tough. If you are a person that's black and brown or Wampanoag or tribal or indigenous, and this is hitting your community in a way where you are hopeless, I do hope that this episode really can bring you some hope. Because I think part of also what happens is when we get to that place as people in recovery, there's that moment where you can either choose to live or die. We've all had that moment. If you are that person, even if you're not a person that deals with addiction and you're a person that has trauma in your body, we've all made that choice of whether we want to live or die. I'm here to tell you that you can live and you can live joyfully and that you can have laughter and you can swear and you can write books called Unfuck You're Stuck at the end of getting through some really painful stuff. So I thought what might be helpful is if I told you how I got here, right? So I'm 7.5 years sober. I'll be 8 in December. Nothing about this is easy, but nothing about life is easy. But we do have choices. I was leaving an AA meeting drunk. Yep. Totally drunk. Went to the meeting drunk because, like, that's what happens. You're like, I'm an alcoholic and I'm gonna drink, and then I'm gonna like go to the place I need to get help. It's hard. So I left that meeting. Did people try to help me? Yup. Was I like anti-help? Yup. I was like, no, I got it. I'm fine. I like in denial that I was drunk in that moment. That's how wild addiction is. Like, not even aware. Didn't do a safe thing, got in my car, drove away, busted my tire. I was on the side of the road. I was on the side of the road, called my husband at the time. He came to pick me up and drove my ass right to Cape Cod Hospital. Was like, yeah, no, I'm done. This is enough. I've had enough. As he should have, as he should have. And I was not kind to people that day. Angry at myself. I was in a full on hatred of the world. I screamed at security guards, nurses. I called them like every name in the book. I remember. It's one of those moments where you don't wanna remember that all those things happened, but they did. And the best that I can do with that is to know that I don't live there anymore. I made a choice not to live there anymore, which is the only way that I can tell you this story today. I went to rehab twice. The first time I always talk about it, it's like, you're a deer in headlights, right? You just get the, alcohol out of your body, but you don't really know how to live. So, the second time, I was like, I didn't die, right? I really was so close to dying on the side of the road that day. Out of the other 50,000 times that I should have died. I remember going to detox and being so happy that I wasn't dead, like that addiction didn't kill me, that I was doing all of these downward dogs and yoga, making all the people do yoga and detox. And I mean, these were people that were like detoxing off of like meth, right? Like and alcohol, but booze for like a really long time. But the only way I could move through that was to tell people that yoga and meditation and movement is what was saving me. And so I did that in detox. And that's where I kind of coined the term spiritual gangster. So still got that. I like it. But I made it through that moment and I got to rehab after detox. And I got committed to being the best person I could possibly be. And that looks different for different people. Doesn't mean there's any good, bad, right or wrong way about it. I just knew that I had to make a choice. And I had tried all these things prior, right? Stop drinking, eating healthy, doing all the things. But I hadn't done the work. The work meaning I hadn't gotten the trauma out of my body, which is a very distinct difference than just getting sober. So I want to be really, really, really clear about that. If we think about how addiction has formed from trauma, right? We talk about trauma as the gateway to addiction. If we're not looking at the trauma, we're not healing shit. I'm going to say a couple things in this episode that might not land well with you. I'm really going to ask you to just try it on. Like, just try the thoughts on. See if you can let it marinate. Because some of the stuff you might have a reaction to, you're going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe she said that out loud. Like, oh, that's not right. That's just totally right. So just be aware. I figured out at some point in time that yoga and meditation and holistic ways were the one thing that could get me sober or actually maintain sobriety, right? Like I could get sober in other ways for short periods of time, but I couldn't sustain it. And so what I did in rehab was get a yoga mat and do all the yoga poses. And I would write down on cards how my trauma was representing in my body. So it would show up as abandonment from my mom. If you read my books, right, the first one talks about how I was left on the train for many years trying to find my mom and how I learned about abandonment and how I was really, for the longest time, felt very unloved. And so I had to put all those things on a card, and then I had to move them out of my body. So I would breathe and move to where I would be able to put like my mom on a card or on a piece of paper and do yoga. And then just like move and cry, right? The ugly cry where you got boogers come out your nose. And then I wouldn't change that card until I could get to a place, not where the tears went away, but to a point where like the triggers would slow down in my body, where I could work with it, where I could have breath and change the thought instead of having this invasive thought over and over and over again. And that's what I did for 30 days. And I was like committed to never choosing not to love myself again in whatever way that looked like, right? If you focus on the drink or the drug, right, it gets like too crazy. But for me, the way that I didn't love myself was by choosing alcohol. That's what worked for me. And so I want you to think about if you can't get out of addiction, if you're like stuck, you're obviously it's overwhelming, but like if you've tried all the things and you've been in all the places like 50 times, there is no judgment on that. I still love you. Like, let's be clear. But let's think about what's not working, right? So, what is that for you? What is not working? You're in AA, you're in NA, you got the sponsor, you go every single day to a meeting, and you come home, and after however many times you pick up. What's going on there? Can you look at that moment so closely without judgment that you can choose different next time? The only way that I could do that was by getting Reiki, was by doing yoga every single day, sometimes in the beginning 4 times a day. How could I find ways to bring more breath into my body, even if it was just in the car? Meditation doesn't have to be this long-winded thing. It's just taking a couple breaths and let it land in your body. That's accessible. What's also difficult about the way that we look at addiction is we have this model which is called A or NA, and like I don't want to again, here's the point we're going to have to put your other hat on. I don't think any of that's bad. But what it's set up to do in this culture is to look outside yourself as opposed to inside yourself. That's an external fix. It is not an internal fix. Not that this is fixable, but it's an internal process. So if you don't have the tools to grab onto your heart when you're in that trigger yourself while you're reaching out for help, right? So they're in duality. They don't exist by themselves. The greatest thing about the AA and the programs and all that is that it creates community. The reason why they work is because it's collective healing in one place. But that's just one part of it. Your sponsor's great in the beginning. It's not to like maintain that forever. That should be the foundation in which gets you so rooted in yourself and your body and the earth that you choose you from there on out. I know I'm like preaching right now, but I can't help it. I can't help people die. Like I don't want anyone dying from this very, very preventable disease. It's so preventable. So I was in rehab twice. The second cohort was probably, there's like a wave of folks that come in together. So there was probably like 10 to 20 of us who came in around the same time. And you get very close very quickly. I was very aware of just keeping on a path and keeping positive. And that became very hard very quickly because people die very fast. So I think right now I'm currently probably 1 to 2 of the only people still alive left from that cohort. That's a heavy weight for me to carry. Well, how come you? How come you could do it and they couldn't, right? Particularly from parents who have children in addiction. How come you, right? The only thing I can say, this is gonna sound so crazy and so simple, is breath. The moment that I discovered that my breath could breathe in life and love for me, that was a game changer. Take a deep breath in. And let it go. If we can connect to ourselves and not the addiction is not you, you are you. And the way that you do it is through creating more breath. What if that was it? What if that was it? But just let that be the start. If you are a parent in recovery and you have your own kids, here's the thing. Be so fucking selfish. Listen, if you are not a person in recovery and you are a parent, it is hard anyway. Parenting is just hard. And the way that this culture expects parenting to be this like one isolated thing, particularly if you are not partnered, even if you are partnered or married or however you want to define that, it's still not in this American culture I'm talking about. There's not a community of people that come together and take care of each other's children. Some people have created that and we're like, you'll drive each other to soccer or whatever. But I mean like a community and where you all live communally where like everyone's kids is everyone else's children. Like we just don't operate like that. Other cultures do. So many moms call me and they are drinking wine and they are in these book clubs and they are not working and they are and it gets away and all of a sudden they are in addiction. And my guess is that if you haven't had previous trauma, parenting can be traumatic because it's such an isolated thing, or it can be such an isolated thing. And communication is hard and relationships are hard. And so if you're like trying to do the hard things in all of that, you get lost. So if you are trying to then, if you get sober and you are a parent, and then you're trying to like do those simultaneously, be aware, this is going to sound crazy, that you come first. Always. Even if your partner, ex-partner is saying things like, you're not doing anything parenting wise. You're not making parenting a priority. Well, guess the fuck what? Keeping yourself sober is the best way to parent. Your children cannot connect with you when you're in active addiction. So it's okay. Let it go. Like let people blah, 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 blah. Like let them do it. Let them do it at you. Let them do it behind your back. And then you get yourself grounded and you parent in the best way that you can sober. And just don't fucking worry about it. That's your path, that's your life. That's how you parent your children. All right. If you got to go to a meeting and you got to go to yoga, which is the way that I have to keep myself sober, that takes priority. Takes priority over maybe having to take my kid somewhere. That takes priority. Because if I miss that day and I'm triggered and I had a really bad something happen that's so awful that I know if I don't get on my yoga mat, that I'm going to go then drive by a liquor store with my kid in the car because she had dance and I had to drive her. The answer is yoga, right? Or it's a meeting. And your community, your people have to support you in that. They just have to. Otherwise, they are participating in your addiction. Okay, let's say that again. I'm going to say it again because it's so important. If people are not supporting you in the way that you need as a community, as a parent, or any other way that you need to stay sober, then they are actively participating in your addiction. We don't want to be enabled. It hurts. Like, for many years, I know that there was people that loved me and but honestly didn't know what the fuck to do, right? Like, I should have been in rehab a long time ago. Right, but you can't force somebody to do that ever. And had they done that, I wouldn't have been in recovery. If people hold boundaries, very, very clear boundaries, then it helps the addict to understand what is okay and what is not. Because honestly, when you're in addiction, you have no fucking idea. Right? I mean, I got to the point where I was like drinking at like 6 a.m. That's where the addiction is so powerful, telling me that that's like normal. If other people can mirror for you that it's not normal and that that's harmful while you love them, that will help them start to see it on their own, and then they can start to get in recovery themselves. It does not mean when you set boundaries or stop enabling an addict that you don't love them. The language is I love you, and I can't do that for you right now. I love you, and I won't be with you when you're like that. I love you. How can I help you? This is what I see. And like, don't lie to us. We know. We know better than anyone else. It fucking sucks what we're doing. Right? If we could stop, we would. Like, I see you, Ayanna. I love you. You have all these amazing qualities. You're really hurting. Alcohol's really hurting you. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going to drink with you. I'm not going to participate in that with you. But I am going to be here to help you to get healthy in whatever way that looks like, right? So I'm going to go to a yoga class with you. I don't care that you're like still an alcoholic, but if you want to do something, you want to go for a walk on the beach, I'll do that. You want to talk about it or you don't, all good. That's how we love people, right? That's how you love your children. That's how you love other people in recovery. And I know it's so hard. I totally get it, right? I can't imagine if that were to happen to Blessing and she's banging on my door and she's trying to come in and she's, as a mom, like, whoa, your heart is it's hard. It is so hard. But I know that the way that we could love addicts is by saying no. And I love you at the same time. Like, the language has to be there, both have to exist together. Because the addict does not love themselves, right? I mean, they hate themselves more than anyone thinks is possible. The other piece is that you can get angry at the addict, right? There's lots of people that are like, that person did this and they did that. But like, and as much as that is true, please just know the addict hates themselves more than you will ever hate them. And it's not that you hate them, I get it, but the anger feels like hate. Doesn't mean you can't share your feelings with them about how their addiction affects you. But sometimes either people are like on the enabling end or they're like, you like just get so angry at the addict. I mean, that's hard. Not that you shouldn't, right? But trust. that the addict already feels lower than you will ever make them feel. Like, and maybe wait until they're a little bit grounded when they're sober to share some of that anger. But we all know that what's under anger is sadness and hurt. So if there's a way to kind of flip that and share the sadness and the hurt, that's going to be a lot more powerful. That's going to be a lot more accessible to heal and to hear. Is addiction a disease? Oh my gosh. Yes and no. Some of you are not going to like this answer. Here's the thing. There's a lot of personal enabling and victimhood that we do as addicts, right? I got triggered. I drove by a liquor store and I got triggered, so I drank. That's a very clear choice. So if you know that that's a trigger for you, right, you're going to do everything you can possible to not make that choice. Here's the tricky part. You call it a disease, right? Is it like cancer? I don't know. Right? There is a slight distinction there. Like, I really have no control over, like, getting cancer in my body unless, like, even maybe, like, you could smoke, I guess that would be one way. But really, and I guess you could be unhealthy, and I guess there are other ways in which that can contribute to, well, stress would be the highest one, right? So we always get diseases when our body is really overstressed. So I guess that would be one way. I just want people to know that there is more choice you have in it than you think you have. Don't fall to the victimhood of addiction. Don't do it. When you start to have agency over it, you start to be able to control it and you start to make better choices. Yeah, it's true. Now, the brain does get addicted in the scientific way where, for example, right, like when I was in active addiction, and I was reaching for the alcohol at 6 in the morning, there is not a thought process there. There is just like a happening. And that you really, in that way, in that moment, the choice is like you have no clue that you're even making that choice. So both are true. But let's not do the thing where we're like, I got triggered and so XYZ happened. Like, it sounds like a cop out. I know that sounds like horrible to say out loud, but be better than that. Be better for yourself. Choose better. Choose better for yourself. It is possible. And then people will often say, well, I couldn't get to a meeting. That's fine. The fucking choice is yours. That's why it's an internal shift. The meeting is to support your internal shift of choosing you. This is a very clear distinction that we got to try to make that is different than the normal paradigm that we are working with addiction right now. So are there days that I want to drink? Sure. But I'll tell you what, it's not triggered by the wine. It's triggered by something in my life when I was younger that makes me feel so captivated by trauma that I want to get out of. So I'm like, oh, so I could just drink and not feel like this. That's the thought process. That's the disease talking. So think about the disease as outside your body, not inside your body. That is the other way that I learned how to manage the addiction. Right? Ayanna is not addiction. I'm me. I'm separate from that thing. When I started to look at it as outside of my body, that something was trying to get in my brain and control. And I'll talk to my addiction all the time. Like, I had a thought the other day, I wasn't feeling so good. I was feeling depressed on the couch, like, oh my gosh, life is heavy. It's overwhelming. There's a lot of changes happening in my life. And I'm feeling pretty shitty about all of it, even though there's really good things happening. It's just a trigger of change that I wasn't used to when I was little. It was just a little me coming out scared. And I had the thought of like, I could just go to a bar. I don't have my kid. I don't have any obligations today. I can just drive myself to a bar. Then the next thought is, fuck you, addiction. Don't do that to me. I love myself. I'm not going to do that. So what I might do is eat a lot of chocolate and a lot of sugar, right? It's not the best choice, but it's the next best choice. But then I'll make sure that I move my body, right? I'll balance it out. I'll drink a lot of water, right? So there are things like, don't deprive yourself from like things that feel good or treat you well, right? You don't wanna, like, then invite, like, a sugar addiction, which lots of us have, right? Or a carb addiction, which lots of us also have. Like, the addiction will look for something to replace. But it's okay. And it's okay to sit and watch Netflix. Like, it's okay to do what your body needs in that moment. Like, sleep a lot. I've been resting a lot. It's helping a lot. Unfuck your stuck. Page 110. Dominant culture and racism functions in a way where it allows people to be disposable. In fact, it's built on relying on disposing of BIPOC bodies. It dehumanizes, and I, for one, got stuck in that process. I was stuck in dominant culture and acting it out, not with other people or my organization, but within myself. I bought into hustle culture. I bought into working so hard that I forgot who I was. I even bought into the idea that I'm disposable in some way. My thoughts became almost violent towards myself, where I didn't want to live anymore. I somehow got my worth so attached to what I could produce instead of who I am that I was losing the meaning of myself. I had made it through 5 years sober and got so lost in that big sober mind. Big red flag. I was no longer me. I felt like I was committing violence against myself by allowing myself to participate and function in ways that absolutely no longer served me. What the fuck happened here? Has this happened to you? If yes, I invite you to explore this further. If not, take a moment, and I still invite you to explore this further. But first, let's just pause. I just dropped a lot on you, so let's pause and breathe right here. Because some of you reading this know me and love me, and that was hard to hear. Even if you don't, these words may have triggered something in you. So let's pause together and make sure we're tending to ourselves. Wherever you are, find somewhere to just be. Find a place where your body can be as comfortable as possible, or a place where it can just breathe. Stop anything else you are doing and drop anything else you are holding. Now, just notice breath. No need to judge it. It's perfect just as it is. If you want, deepen the breath in any way that feels good to you. This is an invitation to work with breath. Take it or leave it. Breathe. Allow your body to breathe. Allow your heart to breathe. Take your time. Slow it down. Slow it down even more. If your mind starts to wander, the invitation is always to be with the breath. Let the breath hold you, carry you, wrap itself around you. No expectations of this moment other than being who you are as whole. Let's continue to back it up for a bit. First of all, let's be clear. The dominant culture is in the air we breathe and the water we drink, and it's really hard to see sometimes. That's why in anti-racism work, there is so much conversation and education around being conscious and unconscious bias. Most of this, in fact, is unconscious. That's why for me, working with the police is so crucial. Most of the acts of police brutality have been committed because they were trained to do so. And if you have been a part of the police culture and then in your family, then you really have been taught only one way to think. The bias is very unconscious and, in fact, taught in a way to maintain white supremacy. I say this because I'm aware that in some way I blame myself for getting caught up in the culture that is in fact very hard to see sometimes in order to separate ourselves from it. I acknowledge my shame around that, but if I stayed in the same shame about it, similar to addiction, I wouldn't be in a place of healing. The feelings would get stuck. In fact, my loves, they are stuck and will stay stuck in my body until I give myself permission for my body to breathe in forgiveness around that. While I was at Kripalu, oh my god, I talk about Kripalu a lot. I was able to go to an incredible 5-day workshop that talked about refuge, detox, and collective healing. I made a choice to gift myself this week of reflection, tuning in, and really allowing for self-love to come back to me. I was able to contemplate many brutal and beautiful things. I was also very clear that it was the dominant culture that was making me sick. I couldn't participate in it anymore. For my spirit to survive, something had to shift. It had to shift quickly because it was very apparent that I had lost grounding in many ways. The grief is so many things that was stuck in my toes. So many things have transpired in my life since 2020, and I didn't pause at all once. I went full steam ahead. I was aware that people were dying at a higher rate from addiction than COVID-19, and that was the real pandemic. I was aware that the number of Black men that had died of COVID-19 from drug overdose rose 3 times higher than any other year in 2020. No one spoke about it. It wasn't on the news. That was another confirmation of who was disposable in this world. When I reflect and think about or speak about recovery and to recovery centers about why I was able to stay alive and others weren't, the answer was always breath. I was able to connect to my breath very early on. That connected me essentially to my soul that swears. Breath is life, and here's why. All right, so here's my poem on breath. Trigger warning, I said a lot. It might have brought up a lot. So please seek out help if you need it. Don't let yourself be in isolation. Please know that you're loved no matter what, that you are worthy, so worthy of being just you without substances. You're already loved. You don't feel it. We do, I do, we do, meaning the collective, our ancestors, all the people that are rooting for you in this process. It's possible. Cry through it, get messy. You're loved, regardless of the snots coming out of your face, right? Here's a little bit about breath. Breath. It is simple beauty. It gives permission. It is our ally when we need to be seen. It softens the place in our body that is hard. It gives opportunity and possibility when there is no hope. It finds love in our heart, especially when there is sorrow. It is with us every single moment that we experience life. It is with me in my addiction, through my sobriety, through my mother's death, the adoption of my daughter, the sending off of my stepson to the military, the gathering of my dog Sawyer, and the separation from my husband. It gives us something to answer and to always come home to. It is hanging out with our soul when we are lost, just waiting for us to return. There is no judgment in breath, just being with. We are with the collective when we breathe because we all need it. Breath reminds us of what it is to be alive. Breath grounds our nervous system and brings us peace. Breath reminds us that we have agency even within a system of oppression. Breath gives us wings to fly and the air to continue as who we are, whole and together. That shit. Unfuck your stuck, people. If you like this podcast, please share, like it, tell your friends, especially people that need to have some uplift in their lives and like to swear and really want to get the fuck unstuck. This is Ayanna Freedom. Thank you for joining this episode.
Unfuck Your Stuck is being produced by Lemonadio. When life gives you lemons, make radio. We encourage everyone to listenhappier.com.